All I have in this world is my balls and my word, and I don't break them for no one. Do you understand?
He was feared in the streets. He was protected by the police, soaked in a life of crime and violence. This is the story of Arthur Neddy Smith, one of the late 20th century's most well-known gangsters in Sydney. Arthur Stanley Neddy Smith, born on the 27th of November 1944, was born in Sydney, was raised in Redfern, and if you know, it's a very tough area, and especially in the 1940s and 1950s, it was a very, very tough area. So he was growing up around violence and drunkenness, and so it wasn't very long before Neddy Smith, as he's widely known, started making a name for himself on the streets as a violent kid. Fight, 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 fight. I'm down the street on a horse. So by his teenage years, he'd already racked up charges for theft, assault, robbery, and it was like prison was already in his teenage years becoming his second home. But he learnt some very, very, very important stuff in that sentence, and that was how to become and operate like a professional criminal. By the 1970s, Neddy Smith had become a major, major player in the Sydney underworld, and his reputation was built on two things: violence and loyalty. So he was very, very brutal. He was very, very efficient, and this made him a very, very dangerous player in the underworld. And what more, he did not mind getting his hands dirty at all. But Neddy getting caught for an armed robbery one day brought him into contact with Roger Rogerson, one of Sydney's most failed police officers, but was very, very, very well known in the 70s, 80s, and 90s for being not just a corrupt police officer, but a killer. And so this began a friendship between Roger and Neddy that literally became the backbone of their criminal empire. So Roger Rogerson had a pretty fucking brutal name pretty early on. So he was well known for killing Warren Lanfranchi that was unarmed, and it's pretty well known that Neddy Smith orchestrated that. So he, Roger Rogerson, went on to say that Warren Lanfranchi pulled a gun on him and then he acted in self-defense and then shot him dead, when it's a well-known fact that that is not what happened. But this is how dangerous Roger Rogerson was, and now these two forces have joined forces. So with Roger Rogerson's protection and a green light. So what is a green light? So he is actually given free reign to do whatever he wants to. So what did this include? It included things like armed robberies, robberies, robbing drug dealers, and even had the green light for doing murders. So Neddy operated with impunity and knowing damn well that every single thing that he done was going to get swept under the rug by Roger Rogerson, which is exactly what happened. So Neddy Smith was also well known for running a crew that did especially armed robberies. So not only did he have the green light for doing these armed robberies, so Neddy Smith would supply him with jobs and what jobs to do, and then he would organize so they could get away without getting affected or interrupted by any police. So, but not only that, like he also sold most of heroin in and around Sydney at this time, which was also supplied by Roger Rogerson. And as I said in my Dennis Allen video, so Roger Rogerson was actually convicted in the 80s for supplying Dennis Allen with his heroin, but was found not guilty on appeal. So Smith just wasn't a big name. He was actually big in stature, but it wasn't just muscle. So Smith was very, very, very strategic. He built networks. He was a master at networks. He paid off cops. He started normal, legitimate businesses so he could launder dirty money. So to the outside world, he might have seemed like just another bloke. But the truth is, he was one of the most calculated and most dangerous criminals that Sydney had seen at the time. So, one of the most famous killings that Neddy Smith was known for was the Sallanne Hawkstep murder. So, who was Sallanne Hawkstep? So, she was a street prostitute and heroin junkie, but she was also the girlfriend and partner of Warren Lanfranchi. And so she was about to, well, she already was. So she went whistleblower and started to unearth all the corruption in the Sydney police force. And so King's Cross was rife with corruption at the time. And so, especially with the prostitutes and stuff like that, they were all privy to all this corruption. And so she, after her boyfriend was killed by Roger Rogerson, she just said, fuck this. I'm going to unearth all this police corruption, which is what she started to do. She done 60 minutes interviews and stuff like that. And so it wasn't long before she was actually, so her body was found floating in a park, in a pond in a park in Sydney. And so it is very, very, very widely believed that Neddy Smith was the person behind this murder, and it was to stop her from unearthing all this corruption. But what was done was already too late, and it wasn't going to be very long before the Wood Royal Commission happened in Sydney, which was the Royal Commission that was put in place to suss out all the police corruption in Sydney at the time. And so, yeah, the police corruption was that bad that they actually had their own royal commission into police corruption, which Neddy Smith was well a part of.
When the police become judge, jury, and executioner, then somebody has to speak. Somebody has to come forward. Somebody has to start somewhere and stop it.
Then bring on the fall of Roger Rogerson. So this is when all the bad stuff for Roger Rogerson started happening, and this is when the decline of Neddy Smith started as well. So obviously with Roger Rogerson now under the microscope, and he's got every single law agency in the country looking at him for breaking the law. It obviously meant that Neddy Smith's green light was now gone, which obviously made it harder for him to do the crimes that he was doing. And although this was the case in 1989, he did get charged with murder for stabbing somebody after a fight on his walk home from the pub. But regardless of that, he still ended up in prison. And so Neddy's saga did not end there. So it never ever stopped for Neddy. He was always in and out of the headlines, and always managed to get himself in a headline no matter what. But the truth is, the truth was coming out about him, and now the Sydney underworld was knowing that not only was he working for the New South Wales Police, he was working with the New South Wales Police and handing them information, and had been doing so for years. And so he come unstuck, and he actually gave evidence against Roger Rogerson also, who actually also ended up in prison in the long run as well. So even behind bars, it didn't stop there for Neddy. He done a number of interviews behind bars. He confessed to many things that they didn't even charge him with, and then other questions that they asked him about, like murders and stuff like that, he just said no with a big smile on his face. But the truth is that that would be the end of Neddy Smith right there in that same prison. So Neddy Smith was someone who suffered from Parkinson's disease pretty young, kept it hidden from the criminal world, but was suffering pretty bad from it in prison. And although, you know, he was giving evidence against people and gave evidence in the Wood Royal Commission, it wasn't to be for Neddy Smith. So unfortunately, he did lose his life inside Long Bay Prison, and ended up spending over 20 years in prison before he ended up dying. But, you know, that wasn't the end for Roger Rogerson. As you guys may or may not know, that, you know, I think it was about 10 years ago now, maybe even 12 years ago, Roger Rogerson was convicted on a murder and went down for that. And so that was kind of the end of the saga for Roger Rogerson.
Drug dealer Jamie Gow thought he was going to be rich from dealing in ice. Instead, a trial heard today, he was shot and killed and his body was dumped out at sea. Roger Rogerson and Glenn McNamara are accused of killing him. Crown Prosecutor Chris Maxwell told the jury they had participated in a joint criminal enterprise to murder Jamie Gow. What is abundantly clear is that Mr. Gow was shot dead behind closed doors. Jamie Gow was shot by one of these two men. He admitted the prosecution could not establish who was the shooter, but because they had taken part in the joint criminal enterprise, both were guilty. Mr. Maxwell said Gow had boasted to family and friends that he was doing a massive drug deal. He said CCTV footage will show Mr. Gow and McNamara enter a storage shed, followed 4 minutes later by Rogerson. A short time later, more footage shows McNamara and Rogerson carrying out a silver surfboard bag, which Mr. Maxwell says was in effect a body bag containing Mr. Gow's body. He was found floating off Cronulla. Mr. Maxwell said when police searched McNamara's car, they found 2.78 kilograms of methamphetamine. Both Rogerson and McNamara have pleaded not guilty. A 15-member jury panel will decide this case, 12 plus 3 reserves. Justice Jeffrey Bellew warning them that they must only consider the evidence they hear in court and not become investigators themselves. Simon Boda, 9 News.
And so Roger Rogerson was given life in prison for that and ended up dying in prison. And yeah, well, there you go, guys. That is Neddy Smith, one of Sydney's most well-known underworld identities. And although untouchable at one time, you know, had green lights, had the cops helping him doing armed robberies, bank robberies, even helping him kill people, it still didn't matter. He still came unstuck in the end. It didn't matter how high and criminally elite he was. It didn't matter. It's the same old story at the end of every criminal story. It's either death or prison or both. And in Neddy's case, it was both. And also in Roger Rogerson's case, it was both. Well, there you go, guys. That is my interpretation on Neddy Smith. If you guys have got any more suggestions on what I should do a video on, chuck it down there in the comment section. I will do my utmost best to do a video on it. I have been the Chaos Chronicles. You guys have been absolutely awesome. Don't do drugs and crime and you won't end up in prison. But before you nick off, if you could, please jump down there, shoot me a subscription. That'd be absolutely awesome. And if you smash that little bell icon, you'll never miss any of my clips.
4 weeks ago, a King's Cross bouncer has been charged with murder. It's not the first time it's happened. According to police statistics, the bully brigade on King's Cross doorways bashes up to 5 people each week.